When you close your eyes and picture retirement, what comes to mind? Is it, sunny beaches, maybe hitting the road, or just the freedom of no alarm clock? For so many of us, that's the image, right? This golden era of leisure, a really well-deserved break after years, decades of hard work. But what if I told you that kind of beneath that idyllic surface, there's this really profound psychological shift happening, one that honestly most people just don't see coming?
That's absolutely right. And this deep dive today, we're going beyond just the dollars and cents, the financial spreadsheets. We're really exploring the mental, the emotional, even sort of the existential transitions people face when they actually step away from working life. We've pulled together some, well, fascinating research and pretty insightful analyses to help you understand how to navigate this huge life stage, not just financially, but, holistically.
Yeah, our mission here is to really dig into our sources, pull out the most important nuggets of knowledge. We want to help you grasp not just what retirement means, but how it actually feels and how you can thrive through its, let's face it, unique challenges, but also its surprising opportunities. We're going to uncover some maybe counterintuitive facts and definitely some practical strategies for a genuinely fulfilling next chapter. Okay, so let's unpack this a bit. Most of our adult lives, we're in what people call an accumulation mindset.
Yeah.
You're working, you're saving diligently, watching those account balances grow, and that brings a very real sense of security, doesn't it? But then, boom, retirement just flips that script completely. Instead of putting money in, suddenly you're taking it out, withdrawals. How does that shift, even if numbers totally work on paper, how does that affect someone, psychologically?
Oh, it's a huge psychological hurdle, a really big one, even for people who save plenty. Our research points to this thing often called spending anxiety. And it's not really about whether you can technically afford something. It's more this deep-seated emotional hesitation to actually spend the money you worked so hard to save. It seems to be rooted in a couple of key fears. One, the obvious one, outliving your money, but also, maybe more subtly, this fear of losing that psychological security blanket that your savings have always represented. It's just a fundamental change in how you view your resources. Almost like switching from playing offense your whole life to suddenly playing defense.
Wow. Okay, so if that anxiety is so real, and clearly it is for many, what do our sources suggest is the key to navigating that? How do you move past that emotional block to actually, enjoy what you've built?
Well, one of the most powerful strategies we found is, interestingly, a kind of radical reframe. Instead of seeing withdrawals as depleting your wealth, consciously think of them as cashing in on years and years of investment. And okay, it's the direct reward, right, for all that planning and sacrifice. Now, to make that mental shift feel more concrete, having a really clear financial plan helps. Solid projections, a sustainable withdrawal rate you feel comfortable with, maybe some contingency buffers built in for, the unexpected. That reduces anxiety. And honestly, don't underestimate the value of talking to a financial advisor who gets the psychology of retirement. They can be really instrumental in helping you bridge that mental gap.
That financial reframing makes a lot of sense. But what about identity? I mean, for 30, maybe 40 years, your job title. It often defines a huge part of who you are. I'm an engineer, I'm a teacher, I'm a nurse. Then retirement hits, and suddenly that defining label just, well, it vanishes. That must create a profound sense of loss for some people.
Oh, it absolutely can. Psychologists actually call this role exit. And our sources show it requires a really intentional shift. You have to consciously work on it. The healthiest transitions seem to happen when retirees consciously replace that professional identity with new, meaningful roles. Think of it less as losing something and more as actively stepping into something new. Becoming a mentor, maybe a volunteer, a creator, a traveler, perhaps a community leader. The main goal is to preserve that strong sense of meaning by redefining how you contribute, how you engage with the world.
And finding this new purpose, it isn't just about feeling good, is it? I was struck by research from the University of Michigan's Health and Retirement Study. It found something really significant. Retirees who reported having a strong sense of purpose were actually less likely to experience cognitive decline, and get this, they lived longer. It's a powerful link, right? Meaning and longevity.
It's astonishing how deeply connected they are. And what's fascinating and frankly encouraging is that purpose doesn't have to be some huge world-changing thing. It simply needs to provide a reason to get up in the morning, something that pulls you forward. Our research highlights great examples like mentorship, sharing your experience, or volunteering for causes that really resonate with you personally, or maybe engaging in creative work, writing, painting, woodworking, music, or pursuing personal growth like learning a new language, even going back to school, cultural travel. The common thread is just meaningful engagement that taps into your skills and passions. It's personal.
Okay, so let's talk about the day-to-day. Those first few months of retirement, they often feel like a perpetual vacation, right? No alarm, no deadlines, bliss. But after that initial novelty wears off, what happens when that golden era of napping and leisure starts to feel, well, maybe a bit tarnished? Our sources mention something called the boredom trap.
Yes, exactly. That initial rush of freedom can, sometimes surprisingly quickly, give way to these long, unstructured days that just feel empty. And the danger is, without purposeful activity, that boredom can easily slide into loneliness. And we know from studies that loneliness is directly linked to cognitive decline and poorer physical health. So the solution, according to the research we looked at, is to proactively build what you might call a retirement rhythm. It's about creating a schedule, flexible of course, but a schedule that thoughtfully blends leisure time with physical activity, mental stimulation, and really importantly, social connection.
Right, a rhythm. So for someone listening, what does that rhythm actually look like in practice? Can you give us some concrete examples from the research?
Sure. It could be as straightforward as joining clubs or classes that genuinely interest you, maybe a local book club, a gardening group, a pottery class. It might involve setting up regular exercise routines that fit your ability. Walking groups are great for this. Scheduling standing coffee dates or lunch meetups with friends is another simple one. Or maybe dedicating specific blocks of time each week to hobbies or creative projects you really enjoy. The key is creating some structure and intention for your days, rather than just letting them drift. And we really need to stress the social factor here. It's huge. Think about it. Workplaces are often our built-in social hubs, right? They provide that daily dose of interaction, camaraderie, just seeing people. Retirement can, sometimes quite suddenly, shrink those social circles, especially if your friends are still working or maybe live far away. So maintaining and actually growing connections requires deliberate effort. It doesn't just happen. Strategies we saw include joining local interest groups, volunteering is huge for this, attending workshops, or just making sure you stay in touch using technology, which is especially vital for keeping up with family who might be spread out. This social engagement, it isn't just about having fun, although that's important. It actively combats loneliness and really supports mental sharpness and emotional well-being.
It really makes you realize how much of life is built around that external structure from work, and then suddenly that scaffolding is just gone.
Which often leads to what some retirees describe as the void, that kind of strange emptiness or lack of urgency. It seems many people underestimate just how much psychological fulfillment work actually provided, even if they didn't love the job itself.
Precisely. And to overcome this, our sources suggest cultivating something called structured curiosity. I like that term. It basically means actively seeking out experiences that stretch your comfort zones a bit. Maybe it's traveling to places that challenge your perspective or learning physically demanding hobbies like, say, dancing or pickleball, which is huge right now, or even taking on some part-time work or consulting gigs. Not necessarily for the income, but for the mental stimulation, the engagement, that sense of contribution it provides. It's about finding new ways to engage your mind and your spirit. Okay, let's shift back to finances for a moment, because even with really good planning, that financial stress can linger, can't it? You know, the fear of a sudden market downturn, the undeniable reality of rising healthcare costs, or just unexpected expenses popping up. It's not just about having the money, but feeling psychologically secure with it.
Absolutely. And that's where building what experts call financial resilience becomes so important for your mental well-being in retirement. Strategies we consistently see include things like keeping, say, 1 to 2 years of essential living expenses in very liquid, safe assets. This helps you ride out market volatility without having to sell investments at the wrong time. Also, being flexible enough to perhaps adjust your withdrawal rates slightly during really poor market years. And of course, diversifying your income streams, relying not just on investments, but also Social Security, maybe pensions or annuities if you have them. And financial literacy doesn't stop being important at retirement. If anything, it's more critical. Understanding your portfolio, the impact of inflation, tax implications, it all helps you feel more in control and less vulnerable to those nagging anxieties.
And what about relationships? This seems like a big one. Especially for couples, retirement completely changes the daily dynamic, right? After decades of maybe having very separate work routines, different schedules, suddenly you're both home all day, every day. That must be a massive adjustment for many.
It certainly is. And that newfound constant proximity can go one of two ways. It can deepen relationships, create wonderful new shared experiences, or frankly, it can create unexpected friction. The key, overwhelmingly emphasized in our sources, is communication. Open, honest, maybe even scheduled communication. Couples really need to talk proactively about how to balance shared time with individual space. What joint activities do they want to do versus separate hobbies? What are their shared financial goals? And importantly, spending habits now. We even saw advice about consciously scheduling some independent pursuits during the week. It sounds a bit formal, maybe, but it can really help maintain individuality and prevent that feeling of being, well, on top of each other all the time.
Let's connect the dots now between physical health and mental health and retirement. It seems like a really powerful interconnected link because poor health can obviously limit your activity options, and that often leads straight to isolation.
Indeed, they're tightly linked. Good health, on the other hand, it just opens up so many more doors to fulfilling pursuits, to engagement, to travel. Our sources consistently emphasize the benefits of regular exercise tailored to your ability. Of course, plus nutritious eating habits, making sure you get routine medical checkups, and focusing on preventive care. But it's also really important to note that mental health needs specific attention too. Depression, for instance, is unfortunately not uncommon among new retirees, sometimes linked to that loss of identity or structure we talked about. So staying active, staying engaged, having that sense of purpose, it's just as important for your overall well-being as managing your finances. They're truly interconnected retirement assets.
Okay, finally, let's talk about maybe the ultimate goal here. What some call the joy factor. This isn't just about avoiding the problems, right? It's about actively cultivating joy in this new chapter of life. What does that look like, according to the research?
Yeah, the joy factor. It's about thriving, not just surviving. Our findings consistently show that joy in retirement really springs from a few key sources. Meaningful experiences, rich relationships, continuous learning, and contributing to something larger than yourself. And a big part of this is giving yourself permission to spend money on those meaningful experiences, rather than hoarding it solely out of that fear we discussed earlier. Joy might be found in the small, everyday pleasures, that morning coffee ritual with a spouse, tending a garden, teaching a grandchild something new like riding a bike. But it can also come from the grand adventures, the travel, the big projects. It's really about finding fulfillment in the everyday as much as in the extraordinary.
This whole mental shift, all this adaptation we've been discussing, it sounds like it's often much easier when it's gradual, not abrupt. Our sources seem to consistently show that the most successful, smoothest retirements are often phased in over time.
That's a really crucial point, the idea of a phased retirement. Examples we saw include things like transitioning to part-time work for a year or two before fully leaving your main career, or maybe taking extended breaks or sabbaticals before retirement to sort of practice what retired life feels like, financially and mentally, and also actively building those non-work identities and hobbies while you're still employed. It's not just about testing the financial waters, it's about mentally preparing yourself, easing into the profound changes ahead.
Yeah, that approach really helps you transition more gently from defining yourself by what I do to understanding who I am outside of work. It avoids the shock, that abruptness of a sudden stop. It lets you smooth the path and discover your new rhythm at a more comfortable pace.
Okay, so maybe let's try and distill everything we've covered into, say, 6 core ideas for cultivating a healthy and fulfilling retirement mindset. First, reframe your savings. See those withdrawals not as depletion, but as the well-earned reward for decades of effort. It's your investment paying off. Enjoy it. Second, redefine your identity. You have to consciously replace that work role with new, purpose-driven roles that bring you meaning and connection. Find your why outside of work. Third, stay actively engaged. Build structure and purposeful activity into your days. Don't just drift. Avoid that boredom trap. Maintain vitality. Fourth, invest in your relationships. Actively maintain and grow your social connections. They are absolutely vital to your well-being and happiness. Don't let them wither. Fifth, prioritize your health. Remember that both physical and mental wellness are invaluable retirement assets. They enable you to actually enjoy your freedom. And finally, number 6, seek joy. Give yourself permission to truly live, to explore, to find happiness in this unique phase of life. Don't just focus on surviving it. Aim to thrive.
So wrapping this up, what does this all mean for you, the listener?
I think the big takeaway is that retirement isn't some single event you just check off a list. It's an evolving, dynamic phase of life. The psychology of it really involves adapting to new realities, letting go of maybe outdated fears about money or identity, and really enthusiastically embracing fresh possibilities.
Exactly. And while that initial shift, especially moving from earning to living off savings, can feel daunting, our sources clearly show it can also be incredibly liberating. By preparing yourself mentally, psychologically, just as much as you prepare financially, you can navigate those early uncertainties with more confidence. You can avoid the common traps of boredom and isolation and truly discover new avenues of purpose and, yes, profound joy.
You know, the most successful retirees we read about seem to see this stage not as the end of something, but really as the beginning of a brand new chapter.
Yeah.
A chapter they get to write entirely on their own terms. So the question for you is, what will your next chapter look like?